In this video, I want to talk you through a case of someone who worked in corporate, they realized it wasn't for them and they were considering quitting, and their story and how that developed. I covered some initial points she mentioned in a previous video, so feel free to check that out. Her name is Ifeoma Ahuna, that's her channel, and so she's talking about quitting the corporate world. Let's listen to what she has to say about how there was a mismanagement between the corporate job and the values they have compared to her personal values.
Because we had this values exercise by our HR team, our people team, that was part of the day plan of events for that day. And they gave us this list of values and we all picked them, and then we were all supposed to go around the table and read them. And I remember everybody was just picking values that were just like, I don't remember exactly what the values were, but they were all so serious. They were like strategic or like discipline or like family, honest, trust. Like it was just like these big, serious words. And I only realized that after, of course, I picked mine. I had picked like creative and fun and like freedom. Those are my values, right? Those are my top 5 because you can only pick like 3 or 5 or something like that. And theirs were all like so serious. And I know this because they were all reading theirs in a row, like around the table. And everybody's was very similar. Like they almost had identical, or like at least they had one value that aligned with someone else's at the table. And even the people in my level chosen from the departments, like they also had very similar values to everybody else. And I was like, oh my gosh. Of course I was the last one to read mine, and I just remember reading like fun, creativity, like freedom, and just feeling kind of like, wow, like how is it possible that no one else at this table has like not one of mine? And then after that we had to give like a little presentation, and I remember just like looking at everybody from the podium and all the leaders and VPs, and I just remember thinking like, I just don't ever want to be one of these people. Not like them personally. I don't look up to their position, and I don't necessarily want to be who they are. I don't want what they have. It was kind of like an intrusive thought, but I was just like, wow, because at the time, remember, I was like delusional. This other life didn't make sense to me. And I was like, wow, why would I think that? And I remember that day, and the next day I literally had to like work from home the next day. This is before work from home was like normal. I just remember being so exhausted and my head hurt, and like I just felt physically unwell. And I don't know if that was just like a sign from God, this is not for you, but I just felt unwell from that event. And I remember feeling very confused and having a talk with one of my mentors who she's still my mentor, I love her to death, and telling her like, why do I feel this way? Like it was the first time I had felt such a distaste for the role and what I was doing. So that was just the seed. That was the seed of where it all started. And then
So before we continue, right, I just wanted to kind of go through some of the points she was mentioning. Now, this values exercise she was doing in the corporate HR team building event, right? And these team building events always kind of cringe and pointless, right? And she mentioned how she had different values when they had to identify their values compared to other people, right? She mentioned fun, creativity, and freedom. And the funny thing is, and maybe she didn't figure this out at the time, is that other people, when they're picking their values in the corporate training sessions, they're going to pick what is the correct fit for the company, right? And whether they agree with it or not, they're faking their values, and everything about the corporate world is about being fake. So they're going to pick what would the company want them to pick, right? They're not going to pick their genuine values. So many of our co-workers, their genuine values might be spending time with their family, or loyalty, things like that, which don't exist in the corporate environment. Of family and loyalty are the two opposite of the corporate environment, which is kind of ruthless. They get rid of you. We've seen a lot of those things in terms of layoffs. You can't fall for the typical corporate lie that, one big happy family at work. So many of our co-workers or maybe senior leaders will pick what will work for the corporate environment, like teamwork or clear communication. That would be their values, some kind of ridiculous thing like that. So just bear in mind, when you're in any type of team building exercise, it has nothing to do with what people are really thinking. They're still playing the character they play in the office, in that team building off-site event, or whatever they want to call it, right? And this is a key sign also to look out for, right? These are top signs for her to look out for, that you might want to quit your job if your values are really different from the company. And I think, there could be small differences. Of course, every individual has slightly different values. No one's going to agree 110% with the company they work for. But if it's really different, then that's clearly a sign that maybe it's not the right fit for you, right? And if you see a future version of yourself and it's so radically different from the people that are slightly older than you, slightly more senior than you in the corporate world, that's a sign that maybe that's not the right fit for you. If you look at your senior leadership and you think they're all cringe or not someone you want to be in the future, then it's probably best to quit or plan for your future ahead away from the corporate environment, right? If you kind of really dislike some of them or what the system pushed them into becoming, right? And lots of people think, oh, well, I can change the system. And I think that's a good positive way of looking at things. And speaking more broadly, many people are, awakening, or you've heard the term maybe great awakening, where people are seeing through all the lies of the system. And I think that's a good popular trend for people to, figure out how everything's rigged, maybe the financial system, the medical system, things like that. But on a day-to-day basis, like as an individual, right, even if you wake up and you see through some of the lies, you're not going to be able to change that corporation from the inside, in a sense, right? If you think you're going to be that one individual who's going to push for more remote work when all the other managers are going to parrot the company line that employees shouldn't work remotely, if you think you're going to really help push for diversity when maybe the company has a fake commitment to diversity, it's just not going to work out. The point is, no one individual can really change a system. It'll have to require global change or millions of people to change their perspective. So one thing I'd tell you to look out for is the system will really push and mold you more than you can mold it. The system will change you, the corporation will change you more than you can change the corporation. And what I mean by that is she might continue a corporate career which she stepped away from. If she continued down that line, she might think she can change the way the teams work and things like that, but more often than not, that'll break her down, it'll wear her down, and she'll end up just conforming in an unhappy way to just become another corporate drone like her other co-workers or senior management. She'll become more like the senior management she doesn't like than like some kind of radical different version of it. And the thing is, the body is always sending you signs, right? What's good for you. If you're feeling uncomfortable, is typically a sign something isn't fundamentally right in your life, right? And if you can't explain it, people getting random migraines, feeling low energy or depressed, things like that, you need to think through, is it something to do with your relationship, your work environment? How can you change that, right? If you're feeling restricted, small, if you have this underlying rage, constant anxiety, you should pay attention to that. I know there were some jobs that I had to switch out of because I dealt with like verbal abuse basically from the managers or one specific manager that was never taken into account. Even though I escalated it, I dealt with kind of constant rage of feeling like I was being put down, unnecessarily subject to unfavorable kind of insults for the sake of just trying to do my job, right? So if your body's sending you signals that you should maybe move, then you should consider that, right? And the other thing is, just because this specific job doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean every corporate job doesn't feel right to you. It doesn't mean that you should just quit and never work in an office again. It could be just specific things about that particular job, and that's why it's important to drill down, figure out your values, figure out what is creating that issue where it's not feeling like the right fit. It doesn't mean the problem is you, because many times the problem is the corporation or maybe the team or the manager you're dealing with. And what ends up happening is, if you're feeling out of place, people will try to gaslight you and say there's something wrong with you, or say you're useless or you're not good at the job or things like that, when it could be just a mismatch of the fit. You might be a better fit elsewhere and you might need to figure that out. Let's continue to learn another thing she mentions here about masking, which is the concept of basically having to put on a level of fake character in the office or in other environments too. And I think part of that is just being professional and being tactful, but part of it can be draining if it feels really uncomfortable with who you are.
I was thrilled to be working from home. I didn't want to be in the office, and really because I just didn't have to put on a show anymore. I didn't have to put on this whole mask to show up. I remember most times when I'd go into the office, my body, and like this is from when I started my internship to the day I left, my body would just go into these like chills almost every time I go into the office. And at first I thought, it's like, I'm excited, I'm just nervous to meet people. But like looking back, like to have chills like that every single day I go into the office is kind of weird. And like before COVID, we were going in like almost every single day. I thought I was nervous or excited, but that would happen every single day. So when I heard we were working from home, I didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't have to put on a show. I didn't have to talk about the weather. I didn't have to pretend to like have interest in my job about analytics and numbers and automation and things. So I like automation, but like in a different way. You know what I mean? This was kind of like an amazing thing for me. Once we went into lockdown, I just went right into creating. It was so much of just work and home. There was no distraction. So like, for instance, in our office, like we had like a Starbucks and like we were in a town center, so we could always go out to lunch. There was a lot of distractions, and I had friends, and like I could walk around the campus and everything, but being at home, there was no distraction. So it was literally me and the job, and I hated the job. I would come to every meeting just like scared that I was gonna like lose my job because I didn't know what I was doing. I literally had no idea what I was doing, and I was like technically a consultant within my role, and I was supposed to be consulting people on data, and I had no idea what was going on. I had a clue, but it wasn't what it should have been. I shouldn't have been consulting anyone. I can consult you on what colors to pick, but I still.
So this is the concept of masking, and lots of people feel that masking or putting on a fake character in the office is quite draining, and you have to be kind of fake all the time. And a lot of those things come down to like fake enthusiasm, acting overly excited for team building events or corporate culture or initiatives, saying, oh wow, I'm so excited for the virtual happy hour that we're doing. Even like when you're working from home, you might have to put on that character. Downplaying your opinions, any opinions you have that are critical of company policies, office politics, or industry trends. You have to keep that to yourself and can't express that. For example, you can't say your opinion on maybe a contentious issue in the office environment. You just have to say, oh, I see both sides of the argument, so I'm just going to go back and focus on my work. The other thing is around adjusting personality, right? If you want to speak more formally, you can't kind of have to like tone down your humor. You have to change your communication style consistently to fit the corporate image to be taken seriously, and all these things, right? Like people giving you extra work and you can't really say no. You have to say, of course, I'll take that on. I'll be happy to do that extra work, no problem at all. Even though you're not getting paid extra for it, you won't get a lot of acknowledgement for doing the extra work. Putting on a show, constantly having to talk about the weather because it's the only safe topic these days, because everything could get you cancelled or be very divisive if you have a particular political view or view on gender or whatever topic. The only safe topic really in the corporate environment is the weather or some generic Netflix show that everyone else is watching. And the thing she mentioned more about like body signs, right? Signs that your body could give you. It could be feeling uncomfortably cold or hot or sweating unnaturally out of stress, feeling constrained, self-conscious. These are all like flags, red flags for you to look out for, that top signs that you might need to quit your corporate job and consider doing something different in corporate or leaving corporate, whatever could work for your personal circumstances. And the thing is, you need to do what is a natural fit for you, right? And Robert Greene in his book Mastery talks about that. Like, what were your initial skills that you had an interest in when you were younger? Those are typical signs that you have a natural interest in a particular field, right? For her, it was doing creative work, and she moved forward into doing more marketing type jobs, freelance marketing from a corporate career, because she realized that creativity was a bit more aligned with her natural interest, right? And things you can look out for, like say for me personally, I like listening to talk radio when I was a teenager, later listening to online shows which became podcasts and things like that, which was maybe like 10-15 years ago. And through that, I kind of realized that this is kind of more tuned with my natural skill, which in this case is talking on YouTube right now. So these are the type of early signs of what works for you. Maybe you had a natural interest in playing music, and I know making music isn't the easiest way of making money these days, but I know people who produce music and post it on websites like Artlist. You might have heard of Artlist or Artgrid, where people have stock music or stock video and they can make some money that's kind of helpful additional income for themselves, and in some cases do it full time. So these are the type of little things you can look out for, what your natural skills and interest, rather than simply what's the safe corporate job. And one interesting thing to mention here is when she had more free time working from home during the lockdown period, it's important to spend time in your free time, to what extent you can, to do some productive work and not being a consumer, right? And this is what she could do when she was working from home. And that's one of the benefits of remote jobs. When you're working from home, it's not that just that you have the additional free time to maybe do some cooking, meal prep, do your household chores during the work day in between your work tasks and meetings. Is that you can rather than wasting time in the office, and so much time in the office is wasted. People are chit-chatting, so much waiting around for one project or something to get approved so you can take the next step. Just people acting and pretending in the office, or even wasting time around the office, going to the coffee shop, gossiping, things like that, talking about pointless work tasks as co-workers need to vent. Instead of all of little moments that get wasted or really lead to, like, I would say 2 hours at least within the office that get wasted, you could dedicate that when you're working from home to your productive tasks outside of work. So in her case, it could be doing creative work, marketing work that she found interesting. Now, another thing is important to mention here, and I'm not having a go at her, but we all know what it's like when you're working with someone who's not good at the job, or they don't have the technical skills to deal with the job, right? And that's another way of looking at this. I'm sure there's some co-workers that were dealing with her that could tell she wasn't even interested in the job, or maybe she didn't have the technical skills for the job. And it can make it quite difficult to work with other people who might be incompetent or a bad fit for that particular job, right? And lots of people are, the funniest thing, even on like sales and trading floors, maybe more senior roles that you think you'd have technical skills for and you'd be dealing with really good quality employees. It's so funny how many times I'd be discussing something technical with a coworker, maybe in a team or in another part of the team that I've been working in, and they just don't know what they're doing, and they're like bluffing their way through the conversation, and you're trying to ask them for a bit of detail about what they're doing or a particular complex issue or project that maybe is a joint venture that crosses two areas of the business, and they just don't know. There's many people that work in finance without understanding it, right? And it's something to look out for. The managerial class, some of you are kind of familiar with that, where you've got many people in kind of corporate roles, managerial roles, they don't know what they're doing, right? And when she says, you can consult her on which colors to pick for a particular dashboard, it is a bit ridiculous, right? I empathize with her not fitting in with the corporate environment, but on the other hand, it's kind of like, I'm sure other people might have been dealing with her and being like, oh, she's not really the right fit for this particular job. And yeah, and if you do get those type of signs that people might be picking up on you're not being the right fit for the job, then that's another thing to look out for if you want to consider leaving the job you're currently at.
That's a whole other thing. On a good day, I had about like 5 to 6 meetings. On a good day. It was a lot of work because I was supposed to get my work done in those meetings. And I just remember like days where I would just literally wake up like 6 a.m. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. because we also worked with like global teams, so we would have to get up at different times. I remember waking up like 6 a.m. sometimes, literally pulling out my laptop from my bed, underneath my bed, because I would hide it at night because I didn't want to see it. I would pull it out from under my bed and just get to work. And then I would be working until 6 or 7 p.m. And I don't know if everyone had that situation because again, I had no idea what I was doing. So it took me like extremely long to figure out what I was doing during the day. Like I had to, I would be staring at the same Excel sheet for like hours. Like I just didn't know what to do. None of this stuff came natural to me. I would have to do like trainings. I would never get to it. It was just a mess. Looking back, I would have meetings throughout the day. And the reason I would get up so early is because I needed time to work or prepare for the meeting. It was almost like I was doing more work preparing for meetings than actually getting the work done. So nothing was actually happening. I would just get put on all these projects that to my coworkers sounded so interesting. Apparently to them, like, they seemed to like this stuff. It sounded so boring to me. Like I was almost just trying to skate my way out of every project. So this is post-March. Depressed. Also during that time, our team had lost a team member, so a lot more work had been put on me, which I kind of felt empowered by initially, but I quickly realized that that was not something to feel empowered by because I didn't know what I was doing. I was also kind of getting feedback and like praises from my team for doing such a good job, and I was like, I finally have an idea of what I'm doing. I kind of doing something right. That quickly led to burnout because I was doing a lot more of something I hated.
So there's many top signs about quitting your job to learn from here. Firstly, many jobs, they give you all these copious amounts of pointless small talk meetings. They drain your time and they really force you to restructure your workday in a very unproductive way, right? You have hardly any time to do the actual work. And I've been in that position too, where you've got so many meetings and then you have to wake up super early or get to the office early and log in and do your actual work and spend your free time doing the work so you can spend your work time doing pointless meetings. And it takes time to prepare for meetings. You could have 5 to 6 a day, like I say, in some of my cases, people don't know what they're doing. It's just senior management who want a sense of feeling important. So you have to think carefully about like how you're managing your workday and in what sense you can minimize those time wasting meetings, or increase the meetings or focus on meetings where there'll be senior management there and there's actually something to discuss. I remember some regular meetings we'd have within my team between 2 or 3 employees within a 20-person team, or meetings with 1 or 2 contacts who are in like similar teams in a different department on the trading floor, and a lot of times there'd be nothing to discuss. So like I would make those meetings like optional, or would cancel them if there was nothing to discuss. You can mention drop a quick email to your co-workers, oh, have we got anything to discuss, or I can cancel it, spend more time doing our own work, things like that, in a nice way. Because there were so many times we just we have these pointless meetings you have to attend and not much was getting discussed, and it was just having a meeting for the sake of it. And I remember one employee who was, in my opinion, particularly smart. What he would do is he would essentially just not attend these meetings, but he was relatively senior. He was like with this one person who's kind of really important to the job and holding together an entire franchise within the trading floor. He would just not attend them, right? Or people would have to really drag him to attend those meetings. And some of those meetings, they're just there because they have to keep track on, oh, we're having these regular risk management meetings or managing the financial risk. But a lot of times there's nothing getting discussed, right? And it's kind of funny when you look back on it. So, like I say, try your best to minimize those time-wasting meetings, making 1-hour meetings, 45-minute meetings, delaying them or a couple days until there's actually something to discuss, or cancelling them for another week or two. And this is another sign you need to quit your job, in the sense that if they're taking up all your time and you don't have time to kind of do your work or have your free time outside of work. And the thing is, if things are not coming naturally to you, that's another sign to look out for, right? If you have no time to do all the pointless company trainings, can you get an extension on that? Can you maybe do that? And then if your manager asks why you haven't done your work, you can justify you had to complete these company trainings that were taking up hours and hours in the work week. And then another thing I want to point out is, there's some buzzwords she put out there. One was she felt empowered from doing team members' work, which I'll get onto in a moment, or she had interesting projects to get involved in that a co-worker said was super interesting. What she's not picking up on is obviously people around her are lying. When people are saying, oh, you're doing this extra work, these interesting projects, that's great, you know, that's something I would love to do. They're just faking it, right? They're pretending that that's great work to get involved in, right? Now, the first thing, and the second thing also with being empowered, when they're giving you extra work or getting praise, none of these things are actually paying your bills, so bear that in mind. So let's break down that one by one. So you need to contrast between what is an interesting project, or people are saying is an interesting project, even if it's completely pointless or time wasting. You need to compare interesting projects to power play projects. What's actually going to give you leverage to make more money, to get maybe more visibility with senior management for promotion. I don't care so much if something is interesting or not, if the focus for me at that time is to make more money, right? So is this project something important for senior management? Is it going to help me maybe get an extra bonus if I complete the project this year, and time it comes around for bonuses, I can get a decent payout, right? So be careful what you get involved in. It's easy to get dragged into all these projects people are saying are super interesting, super important, because so many people are trying to raise their profile. So you might have a co-worker or another team that want to get you involved in a project, and you should be careful how much time you're committing to that. If it's not really your project, you're not going to get a lot of praise from senior management. It's not going to impact your bonus much. Those are things to look out for, because it could be another project that works out well for another team or employee, and you're kind of on the periphery of it and you're doing a lot of work, and it's their department that's going to make the majority of the money or get the majority of the praise from senior management. So if we continue looking through this type of thing, she's mentioning doing team members' work. Now, I would say this is a big no. If your manager's putting loads of extra work on you, you should ask how you can balance that with other tasks, with your normal work, that you're the main focus of what you're meant to do. And you can say that in a nice way, like, oh, I'm happy to help out with this. If team members left, I'm happy to help out with extra work. It's just the majority of my work is doing what your day job is, what your job description is. And then you can say, well, yeah, I'd be happy to take on a little bit of it, but I need extra time to do these other tasks, or I don't know how I can balance this and prioritize with my other tasks, given the time restrictions of the work day, you're working whichever hours you work, 8 to 6, 9 to 5, right? You say it in a nice way, right? You're basically asking for extra time to do other work so you don't get loads of work dumped on you. And after a few months, if you're feeling like you're taking on, or you're being forced to take on too much extra work, if there's a lot of work to do, you can ask for, if I'm covering two business areas, for example, FX trading and commodities trading from a risk management perspective? Will this be compensated given I've got an extra workload? And if they don't have an interest in that, or they say it's coming shortly down the line, you'll get a pay rise next year, you can accept that. But if they keep delaying it or bluffing or kind of blagging and lying to you, then you can consider leaving that particular job. And you should also look out for this in job interviews. I remember a job interview, when I do job interviews, I often ask, how's the team structured, who's taking care of which different areas of the business, and do they say things like, oh, you need to cover for other employees or do the work of others. I remember a team where I was interviewing for a particular job, and they mentioned many team members had left over several weeks or several months, and then many people were having to dedicate extra time to do other pieces of work. So basically you had this completely 10-person team being ran by 3 or 4 people, which is completely ridiculous. That's a red flag to look out for in job interviews. How is the team structured is an interesting question for you to ask, so you understand where you fit in. Are you fitting in at a very junior level of the team, senior level of the team? That's something to look out for. And the thing is, the last point here about getting praise from other co-workers, right? Co-workers can give you lots of high praise, but does that actually result in paying your bills? More often than not, it doesn't, right? So don't fall under the illusion that, oh, I'm getting praise from co-workers, I'm finally getting attention and validation, but they really appreciate me taking on extra work, it's really helpful. This is kind of laughable. They're kind of laughing in your face, and that's why you need to focus on facts, not feelings, to focus on that Ben Shapiro quote about facts and not feelings, right? This is something to do with this kind of emotional, feminized, effeminate workplace. Lots of people use emotions to manipulate you, right? And I remember a famous phrase by Kanye West, or changed his name to Ye, and he talked about, I won't get into the context of the quote because it's kind of a long side point, but he mentioned about how the system wants to traumatize you and monetize you, right? Traumatize and monetize. And in this context is they wanted you to do extra work without extra pay. They're traumatizing you by dumping on extra work on you, and they're monetizing that while the company is basically getting more work done from fewer employees and saving money and maximizing their profit and not really giving you any extra payout. So they're kind of traumatizing and monetizing you, extra work without extra pay. And this is the type of scenario that many people find themselves in when they're kind of looking out for whether they should stay at a job or not. So look out for some of those top signs about quitting your corporate job.
I would always have the Sunday scaries, like the anxiety of like, oh, I should get this thing done because if I have this meeting at 8 a.m., I need 3 hours before that to like stare at my screen and pretend like I have a clue of what's going on. So I remember July 4th, so this is kind of the turning point that weekend. I remember thinking, okay, you need to do something about this. I don't know what to do. But you need to do something. And I was like, I was really gung-ho on like, I need to pay off my student loans. Like I didn't have too much like at the time. So I was like, I can just work really hard for 1 year and I can pay them off and I can leave. The literal next day, I don't know what triggered me, but I was on TikTok or something. I looked at my boyfriend and I was like, I can't do it. Like, and he's just like, yeah, I know you said you can't do it. You're gonna stay for another year and then, leave. And I was like, I don't think I can even do another day. I just remember it just hitting me like a ton of bricks. He was always very supportive of like, just quit, because if it's hard, you'll figure it out. And I was very scared and I was like, no, like I live on my own. The only thing I didn't pay for was my phone bill. So I was just nervous that I'm like, what am I gonna do? I don't even started in marketing. I don't even know what I like to do in marketing because I knew that was obviously the direction I was going in.
So quick thing here is you mentioned Sunday scaries. Now Sunday scaries is when people deal with anxiety on Sunday night before they go back to their day job on Monday morning. And it's another key sign, right? That your body's giving you that you're under stress and you have a lack of free time. Essentially, she mentioned, working quite long hours to fit in a work around the long work meetings. And that's the key thing, is time management is so important when it comes to life and work. I know it's easy to get dragged into work or dragged into, the daily drama of life, right? But it's very important to really consider how to live your life in the best way. And there's a term called wage debt slave, where people feel like they're a slave to pay off their debt by working their job, to pay off their student loans and things like that. So it's very important you don't get caught up in the traps like this. This system really doesn't care about you. This system sees you as another kind of cog in a machine. Like in a corporation, you'll be a cog in a machine, but also just someone to manipulate even from a young age, dumping you into massive student loans before you can really decide what you want to do for a living. So let's listen to a story about applying for other jobs and considering different opportunities.
I didn't even want to apply for other jobs. Like, I remember a lot of people were like, just apply for other jobs and then you can just hop over to the next thing. And I was like, but here's the thing. I don't think I even want to work for someone else. Like, that's the problem. I'm tired of having to put on a show and pretend and fake things. And everyone suggested the whole 9 yards. Transfer to a different department, work in the marketing section of the company, which honestly wouldn't have been much different because it's more internal marketing. Everyone was like, apply for another job or stick it out, and nothing was sounding appealing. And who was I to say like, no, 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 right? Because I didn't have a lot of options, but I just knew that this wasn't just coming from not liking the job. It was just the sense that like, I've always wanted to be entrepreneurial. I've always wanted to have my own business. I've always wanted to have something of my own. Going back to my values session, my value is freedom. Like, I love feeling free, and working for someone doesn't give me that kind of autonomy that I want. July and August, I was heavy contemplating, but I knew I was gonna leave. I just knew it wasn't gonna last. I wasn't gonna make it a full year. So by September, I muster up the strength to tell my manager, because I felt like I would give her 1 month notice, but everyone was like, that's too long. So I did it in like, I gave her like a 3 weeks notice. I told her that day, it was around Labor Day, that I think I want to leave. No, I didn't tell her I think, and that's another tip. Don't say you think, like you're doing it. So I told her I want to leave. I will probably leave by the end of the month, so the end of September. I mean, like a good manager, she tried to see what she could do, if there's anything that she could salvage. She needed some time to think, kind of send the message upwards. Our managerial team kind of got back with me on like, maybe there's another option, or maybe there's another way, or just kind of like talking me into staying in a way. I appreciated it. I felt like they kind of valued at least my work and who I was as like an employee, but I couldn't do it. I was very honest at the time, and I didn't know why I was being so honest, because honesty is not something you do in corporate. But I even remember telling the VP, like, this is just something, it doesn't make me happy. And it kind of felt good to be unhinged and just like say exactly what was on my mind, because that was so not the case that that's just not something you do often there. I actually stayed an extra month. They were trying to see what they could do for me, probably trying to keep me longer, just to, so they didn't have to lose an employee. But they stayed for an extra month trying to look for another role that could work. Nothing ended up really coming into fruition, and during September and October, I was just getting more and more sure that I wanted to leave. I ended up leaving on Halloween officially. It was very anticlimactic. I like turned in my laptop to my manager. I remember also before leaving kind of giving everybody like a 1 or 2 week notice that I was like leaving, like the whole team that I was working with or the teams I supported. I had a lot of people tell me, don't leave, you need to find another job here, you're never gonna find a job anywhere else. Like, older people telling me this, and as a younger person, I was very like, oh my God, maybe they're right. But I remember just telling them, I was like, if it was possible for me to stay here and be happy, I would, but it is I feel like I have no choice. It is easier to be uncertain and leave than to stay here.
Those are interesting considerations there, right? Now she's mentioning self-employment and having to fake it less, which is true. If you're self-employed, you have to be professional when you're dealing with your clients, but you do have less fake kind of behavior compared to the corporate environment where you're judged, where you're sitting up straight on the chair or leaning back on the chair, or exactly what clothes you're wearing, if they're the same brand or same expensive brand of co-workers, things like that. She mentions, I think it's a good piece of advice she received about having internal moves, right? Rather than job hopping. So I would say, if you're looking to leave a company, you don't want to work there long term, I would say consider an internal move, because when you organize that internal move, or at least pursue it, firstly, it's a nice way of your manager kind of seeing that maybe you want to do something different, but you're not trying to leave immediately. You're willing to help the company or the team before you maybe leave in the future. And also, it kind of buys you time. Maybe you go into their supply chain department like she did to marketing, and it's not really a good marketing department. It's not somewhere you want to be long term, but you're getting paid each month for not doing much work. And particularly when you're moving internally, you have the whole new training process, you're learning new processes, you're learning some relevant skills, but it's not the most taxing thing. So say you're looking for jobs externally and then you do an internal move at the same time. Maybe it takes you 6 months to find the best job you want externally, and in the meantime you pick up a couple new marketing skills, you learn some basics, and you're not having to do much work because you're a new member of that team. And then it's easy. You can just basically quiet quit in a nicer way, right? You're just putting in less effort and you're not doing much work while you do and focus on all your job interviews outside of that company. So the thing is, that's good, right? And when it comes to buying yourself time, that's how that could work if you're going to leave anyway. And it's important, in that process to find out your internal values. In her case, it's freedom. So maybe she made some compromises in terms of the money or the stability of the income she would have for more self-employment so she can work on her own terms. And the thing is, I would recommend not being honest in corporate, right? She mentions, being honest in corporate isn't something that's common. You don't really owe anyone explanations. If you quit a job, you could just say something simple: I'm looking for a job elsewhere. I remember a funny story where a co-worker was leaving my team and we had a bit of time to talk before a meeting was starting. So I just asked him, how's it going? Oh, happy for you in your future move. Are you moving to another company or something like that? And he just shut down the conversation with me very quickly. He was like, I don't want to discuss which company I'm going to next. I just keep it to myself. And I said, okay, then. I was just trying to have a general polite conversation. He ended up moving to another major bank, which was like 5 minutes walk, another investment bank in the business district of London, Canary Wharf. But it was a bit like, I'm not going to gossip about his next job. I don't know what the purpose of that was. I was just trying to ask a general conversation kind of point while we wait for a meeting to start. But this is the thing, right? He understood, and she's right here. It's not good to be honest with your co-workers, and even any little details you say, people are going to gossip about it. Even if you think, maybe your manager's nice with you, when you leave a company, right, they're going to gossip one way or another. I know many instances where a team member leaves and everyone's going to their team drinks and saying so many good things about them, but the moment they leave, literally the day after, they have the work drinks for him leaving on the last day. I remember co-workers completely trashing this employee, saying, he didn't do a proper handover of the tasks. I don't know what to do. He didn't explain this properly. I can't do this, things like that. So this is the reality of what people really think about someone when they don't have to fake it, right? So when she leaves this job, I'm sure her manager will gossip about her with her other friends on the team at her level, a bit more junior than her. Some will go, what was the real reason that Ifama, in this case, this employee left? They go, well, she said she doesn't like the job. She wants to do something better. She doesn't want to have a boss or something like that. She'll being given over the top retelling of what you actually said. So you have to be careful. Just don't say much. It's a bit like when you're dealing with the police. The less you say, the less liability you effectively have. And when you leave, often they have no incentive not to gossip about you. It's not like, that gossiping can come back to them. No one's going to speak with you after you leave the job in most cases, right? You don't owe explanations. If you quit a job, just say, I'm quitting, I'm looking for another opportunity. People ask, what's that job? It's up to you whether you want to share that or not. If you're taking some break away from work and maybe going traveling, people will give you negative energy for that because they'll think, how do you have enough money to travel for a year without working? What's going on with this guy or this female employee? So it's your best not to say anything. Just say, I'm looking at other opportunities. Yeah, I'm just pursuing other opportunities. You're leaving the company. They don't care about you. You shouldn't care about them. And then it's very common, right? People to gossip and to talk down to you, to kind of have no reason to keep your secrets, especially after you're gone. And I say people forget about you, the work gets reassigned, and you're like a cog in a machine that they replace with a newer cog. The thing is, don't tell your co-worker something doesn't make you happy, because you never know if you have to go back into that work field or back into supply chain work just because you can't find a marketing job. People might be like, I thought you said you don't like our work. You're talking down about our type of work. So why are you back in the industry working in supply chain? So you never know what your circumstances could be. It's just the best to end things with minimal communication beyond the fake nice things you need to say, right? So, and that's the thing. You should always set yourself up before you leave a company. That's why quiet quitting in one way, shape or form is good. You don't have to drop your work effort to doing nothing, but make sure you got another thing lined up if you can. In her case, she was kind of particularly unhappy with the job, so she didn't want to wait. But if you can, just put in a bit less effort in work while you maybe do your marketing qualification and get a professional marketing certification before you go into that field of work, right? In case you need to, like I say, stay at that job and get paid for a few extra months, right? And you find other roles, collect the money, and find another opportunity that you're more happy at, right? And the other thing is boomers. She mentioned some older employees saying, giving her fearful advice, like you have to stay in this job, you won't find another job if you leave. This is the thing with boomers or the older generations. They're addicted to security and stability, right? It's everything to them. So they will just stick with a job that makes them miserable just to keep their safe life and pay off their mortgage in their house. They don't have much going for them. They don't have much of a future. They're not considering how interesting and exciting it could be to pursue self-employment, to travel the world, whatever your interest could be. So if you're not playing it safe, they're going to be heavily critical of you, because it's almost like them internally, from an insecure perspective, you're questioning their life decisions to work these dead-end jobs that they might not be happy in, right? So the truth is, playing it safe, playing the boomer card, which would be just a secure, stable job where you could effectively not get the security and stability you're looking for. There's lots of layoffs, junior employees getting treated like second-class citizens at work, while boomers keep the high-paying management jobs. So the key thing is not to be reckless, but to make smart moves and not let boomers give you their typical terrible life advice. You know, I sometimes think, because I've got bad advice from boomers too, and the older generations, you know, in the UK and I think other parts of the world, when you buy cigarettes, they have a warning sticker on them, you know, warning, smoking kills, smoking harms lives, right? Or harms your lungs. I think you should put the same disclaimer on boomer advice or older generation advice. Warning, listening to boomers can lead to a miserable life or a sad life, right? Because they give you such terrible advice. Of course, you can listen to everyone, but they're just going to parrot what's in the news, what's the mainstream opinion. They're not really going to give you the advice that's going to give you a fulfilling life, and that's what many people are looking for. So I hope you learn from that. I worked in the finance industry for over a decade, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, many other top investment banks. And I have a coaching program that I offer my clients. There are 5 spots available each month. And if you're interested in working with me, there's a link in the description. I'll help you map out your career, maximize your freedom, deal with office politics, be a man in a corporate environment and how to survive and thrive in those environments, how to effectively prepare for promotions, and also set yourself up in certain cases when it comes to quiet quitting and landing a decent layoff package, and then considering accelerating your success in terms of developing financial freedom. So that's what I offer through my coaching program. Like I say, link in description. I'll be happy to work with you. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. Let me know what you feel about these particular instances where you might want to quit your corporate job, and the top signs to look out for when you are quitting. Perhaps you're quitting your own jobs. And I'll see you in the next video.